The morning rain tapped steadily along the glass panes of Sweet Dreams Bakery as Karis Monroe lined up her fresh cupcakes inside the front display. Each swirl of frosting held a delicate sugar violet, her tiny signature flourish. She adored these quiet dawn hours before anyone walked in, moments when she could breathe, think, and soak in the comforting mix of vanilla and cinnamon drifting around her. Welcome to Voices of Auntie May. I post new life stories every day, so please hit subscribe and like the video. Now, let's return to my story. I promise you'll enjoy it if you stayed till the end. The phone rang sharply at exactly 7:30, which was odd. Customers rarely called at that time. Hello, this is Karis. She balanced the receiver between her cheek and shoulder while arranging the last row of cupcakes. Good morning, Miss Monroe. This is Barclay Quinn from Quinn Owen and Associates. I'm calling regarding the estate of your godmother, Miss Eris Holloway. Karis went still. Eris had passed away 3 weeks earlier after fighting cancer for nearly a year. Karis had gone to the funeral but had drowned herself in work afterward, trying not to think about losing the woman who had filled the void her mother left. Oh, yes, of course. How can I help you? Miss Holloway left you an inheritance, Miss Monroe. We need to meet to complete the paperwork. It's urgent because of the nature of the assets. Assets? Karis echoed. I don't understand. She never mentioned anything to me. Your godmother left you her restaurant, Miss Monroe, the Legacy Crown? Karis's hand shook so hard that a cupcake slid off the tray and splattered on the floor. The Legacy Crown, Atlanta's most revered restaurant. Politicians, celebrities, and top executives all fought for reservations. Eris had grown it from a tiny cafe into an icon over 30 years. There must be some error, Karis whispered. No mistake, the lawyer replied. Miss Holloway was extremely specific. She regarded you as her daughter. She believed you were the only one suited to preserve the restaurant's legacy. An hour later, Karis sat inside Mr. Quinn's office, staring at the documents confirming her ownership of the multi-million-dollar business. Eris knew about her prognosis for over a year, the lawyer said gently. She prepared everything carefully. There's the restaurant, the wine cellar, vendor contracts, and instructions for the staff. She also left you a letter. Karis accepted the envelope with unsteady fingers. On the front, in the familiar, tilted handwriting, it read, To my dearest Karis, may I take this home? Certainly, but we must finalize the transfer soon. The restaurant can't go long without someone in charge. Karis nodded, still barely processing any of it. She remembered the first time she stepped inside the Legacy Crown's kitchen at 9 years old. Her mother had worked there as a pastry chef until pneumonia took her when Karis was 14. After that, Eris had lifted her up, paid for culinary school, and taught her the craft. You're special, Karis, Eris always told her. Your hands know the dough, and your heart knows what to give people. Lost in the memories, Karis barely noticed herself signing the final page. She had learned everything she knew about baking from Eris, but running the entire Legacy Crown felt impossible. When she returned home at noon, she hoped to read Eris's letter before her husband, Jarvis, came home. But his car was already in the driveway of their modest suburban house. They'd met 6 years earlier at a charity event hosted by Jarvis's company. Karis had made the desserts. Jarvis had approached her holding her lavender honey cake and told her nothing had ever tasted so good. They married a year later. Karis, you home? His voice sounded tight, too tight. She found him sitting on the sofa with a glass of whiskey. Drinking at 2 in the afternoon was unusual for him. What's wrong? Why aren't you at work? Jarvis looked up. Usually handsome and composed, he looked shaken, almost frantic. My mother called. She told me, you inherited the Legacy Crown. Is that true? Karis froze. She hadn't told anyone. How did he know so fast? So it is true. Jarvis took a large swallow of whiskey. Karis, why didn't you tell me? I had just come from the lawyer. I planned to tell you tonight. Mom heard from the wife of one of the waiters. They're all stunned. Eris left the place to you, not the chef, not the manager. Karis felt warmth rush to her cheeks. Of course people would talk. A small local baker suddenly inheriting one of the top restaurants in the state. She was my godmother, Karis said softly. We were very close. But a real restaurant, Karis. Jarvis got up and started pacing. This isn't a little bakery with cute cupcakes. It's a massive business worth millions. Karis held the envelope with Eris's letter tighter. She knew he wasn't wrong. She lacked experience, but Eris had chosen her for a reason. I can handle it. She taught me everything. Be reasonable, Jarvis snapped. You make great cakes, but what do you know about wine programs, staff structures, financials? I can learn. Jarvis dragged a hand through his hair, his tell when he was annoyed. Mom thinks it's insane, and honestly, I agree. At the mention of his mother, Karis felt the usual knot in her stomach. Tamsin had never approved of Karis. She said baker like it was an insult. What does your mother have to do with this? Karis asked. She's coming for dinner. She wants to discuss everything. Discuss my inheritance? Our inheritance? Jarvis corrected sharply. We're married, aren't we? The words cut Karis. In 6 years, he had never cared about my bakery. It was a nice hobby to him. Until now, when something valuable appeared. That evening, the house filled with the strong scent of Tamsin's perfume, before she even walked in. As usual, she didn't knock. I'm here, darlings. Tall, impeccably dressed with perfect makeup, she still looked younger than 60. Karis, sweetheart, she kissed her daughter-in-law's cheek lightly. What a shocking turn of events. You must be overwhelmed. Hello, Tamsin. Karis replied politely. Yes, very unexpected. I'm sure. Eris was always dramatic. Remember, dear, I told you how she once refused to serve that state representative for being 15 minutes late? At dinner, prepared by Karis hours earlier, Tamsin launched into her plan. I've spoken to Fielding, she said to Jarvis, ignoring Karis completely. We need to move efficiently. Fine dining is thriving, especially for established spots like the Legacy Crown. Who is Fielding? Karis asked. My financial advisor, dear. Not important. What matters is we have 2 choices. Sell the restaurant immediately while its name is still golden, or I could take over. Karis nearly dropped her fork. Excuse me? Don't glare at me, dear, Tamsin's laughed. I wasn't always a housewife. I used to be an accountant before marrying. I've always wanted a restaurant. You've never said that, Karis replied. Well, there was no reason before, Tamsin said airily. But now that the chance is here, Jarvis, tell her. Jarvis looked conflicted, eyes bouncing between them. Mom has a point. She knows finance. I could help with tech in operations. And me? Karis asked quietly. Eris left the restaurant to me. Tamsin smiled tightly. Of course you can still be involved. You can handle desserts. They're lovely. But management is different. You need connections, experience. Karis thought of the envelope still unopened in her purse. She wished she'd read it sooner. I need time to think. This is too big to rush. Of course, Tamsin said sweetly, but don't take too long. Business moves fast. That night, once Tamsin had left, Karis locked herself in the bathroom and opened Eris's letter. To my dearest Karis, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Don't be sad. My life was full, and you were a great joy in it. I leave you the Legacy Crown Not because I lack heirs, but because you're the only one with the heart to protect what I built. You give people not just food, but happiness. It's rare. You'll doubt yourself, but remember, I started with a small cafe and no experience. What I had was passion. The staff will guide you. Chef Bram Cassidy has been with me 15 years. Manager Nita Price knows every system. They're ready to help you. And Karis, there are details not yet handed to you. Only Barkley knows everything. Go to him if trouble comes. Believe in yourself as I believe in you. With love, Eris. Karis pressed the letter to her chest, tears spilling. She could feel Eris's faith wrapping around her. When she
The words hit her like a slap. She used you your whole life, Jarvis continued, his voice edged with bitterness. First as unpaid help, then as someone to lean on. And now she's dumped a failing burden on you, something you're destined to fail at. Don't talk about her like that. Karis's voice rose, something she had never done with her husband before. You don't understand anything about what we had. I know my wife has spent 6 years selling cupcakes in a tiny shop, barely scraping by. Jarvis stepped closer, his tone sharpening. And suddenly, you're handed a restaurant worth millions. What do you think people will say? What do you imagine Legacy Crown's regulars will think when they learn their favorite restaurant is now owned by someone who has never managed more than a sheet cake? Each word struck her like a lash. Her resolve wavered. Maybe he was right. Maybe she would fail. I just need time to think, she whispered, inching toward the door. There is no time, Karis. Jarvis snatched the documents from the bed and followed her. Mom already spoke with the vendors. They're all waiting. Either you let us help, or... He didn't finish the sentence, but the threat filled the silence. Karis felt cornered. The familiar pressure of giving in tightening around her. Her whole life she had been the one who folded, the one who kept peace, who compromised, who tried to soothe everyone else's nerves. Fine, she said at last. I'll sign, but only temporarily. 1 month, no more, and I want to be told about every single decision. Relief washed over Jarvis's face so fast it made her stomach twist. Absolutely, darling, that's sensible. He placed the papers on the table and offered her a pen. Karis lifted it slowly, feeling the weight of the moment. Suddenly, Eris's face flickered in her mind, her steady smile, her certainty. Believe in yourself the way I believe in you. Before she could sign, the phone rang. Karis startled, dropping the pen. I'll get it, Jarvis muttered, irritated. While he talked, Karis examined the documents. The power of attorney hadn't been drafted for a month. It granted Tamsin full control, no limits, no timeline. This wasn't temporary. It was a takeover. Jarvis returned, eyes blazing. That was Mom. She talked to the chef. He says he'll quit if management doesn't decide by tomorrow. We have to act now. It was a lie. Chef Bram adored Eris. He would never issue ultimatums, especially to someone he didn't even know. Something snapped inside Karis. For 6 years, she had swallowed insults about her work, endured Tamsin's icy smiles, accepted their belief that she was just a hobbyist wife who baked little treats for fun. But no more. No, she said. This time, there was no tremor in her voice. What do you mean, no? Jarvis stepped forward, anger twisting his features. I'm not signing. She straightened her shoulders. Legacy Crown is mine. Eris trusted me. I won't betray that. Jarvis slammed his hand against the table. You'll destroy that restaurant. You'll destroy 30 years of hard work. Maybe. She held his gaze without fear. But it will be my mistake and my responsibility. His face darkened with fury. He grabbed the papers and his phone. "Fine. If you won't act, I will. Mom can fix this." Karis watched him dial, strangely calm. She knew everything would change from this moment on. Their marriage would not go back to what it had been, but that no longer frightened her. 20 minutes later, Tamsin swept into the house as though she had been waiting by the door, ready to pounce. "Karis," she announced sharply, skipping any greeting, "Jarvis told me everything. You're overwhelmed and emotional, and I sympathize. Eris's death was unfortunate, but sentiment doesn't belong in business." Karis stared at her, her expression unreadable. She had spent years trying to earn this woman's approval, 6 years of smiling, agreeing, pretending she didn't notice the manipulation. "I've made my choice," Karis said quietly. "I'm going to run the restaurant myself." Tamsin barked a short, humorless laugh. "Be serious. You're a baker, not an executive. Legacy Crown is a complex operation. Staff, vendors, elite clients. One mistake and the whole thing collapses. Is that what you want?" "No," Karis replied softly. "And that's exactly why I won't hand it to you." Color drained from Tamsin's face, then returned in a deeper, angrier shade. She turned to Jarvis. "Tell your wife she's being ridiculous." Jarvis shifted uncomfortably. "Karis, let's just be reasonable." "I am being reasonable. Eris trusted me. She left me a team who knows the restaurant. I can learn." "A team?" scoffed Tamsin. "Those arrogant chefs and waiters, they'll never follow you. They'll see how unqualified you are and walk out." "I'm willing to risk that," Karis answered. She turned to leave. "Stop." Jarvis grabbed her arm. "We can't walk away. We have to decide this now." Karis pulled free. "It's already decided. The restaurant is mine. I will run it." Jarvis's face twisted with rage. He lunged toward the table where the lawyer's documents lay. "Enough!" He seized the papers. "If you won't make a rational choice, I'll make it for you." "What are you doing?" Karis reached for them, but he shoved her aside. "What should have been done from the start?" He thrust the papers at his mother. "Here, the restaurant is yours. Handle it." Tamsin's smile was triumphant. "Good boy. I knew you'd do what was necessary." Karis felt something inside her fracture. Her husband had just handed away her inheritance, her life's dream, without even asking her. "You can't do that," she whispered. "Those documents are in my name." "Marital property, dear." Tamsin patted her cheek. "Jarvis has as much right to it as you, and he's chosen to give that authority to me. Perfectly legal." She knew it wasn't. Under Georgia law, inheritance wasn't joint property unless specified in the will, and her will contained no such clause. "We also have certified copies, and the originals have already been filed. They cannot change ownership without your notarized signature." Relief slipped through her chest like warm air. "So I'm still the legal owner?" "Without question. But if they attempt anything on your behalf, it may cause complications. We should meet first thing tomorrow." "All right," Karis murmured. "And Mr. Quinn, Eris wrote that not everything was given to me today, that there were details only you know." Silence stretched on the line.
"Yes, that's correct," the lawyer finally responded, his voice measured. "Miss Holloway expected complications could arise. We'll go over everything tomorrow morning in my office at 8 before the business day begins." "I'll be there," Karis replied. That night, she slept on the small couch in the bakery's back storage room. She turned her phone off completely. She didn't want to hear Jarvis's calls when he realized she hadn't come home. Curling up under a thin blanket, she let the quiet of the bakery surround her. The next morning, she walked into Barclay Quinn's office precisely at 8, carrying a paper bag filled with still warm croissants. Baking them had helped steady her nerves before the meeting. Miss Monroe, Barclay said, rising from his desk with a polite smile. Tall and slender, with observant eyes behind refined glasses, he gestured for her to sit. She offered him a croissant and he accepted immediately. Incredible, he murmured after taking a bite. Now I understand why Eris spoke of you so highly. Mr. Quinn, Karis said gently, getting straight to the point, what exactly did Eris prepare for, and what did she mean about the assets in her letter? Barclay set the pastry aside, wiped his hands, and pulled open a drawer. Eris was aware of her condition for more than a year. During that period, she reorganized the entire business structure. He placed a file on the desk and opened it. The Legacy Crown isn't just a restaurant. It's several entities working together. The building itself, which now belongs to you, the brand and its reputation, and additional assets that were arranged separately. He flipped a page, listing them one by one. The wine cellar, valued at over $200,000, is owned by a trust in which you are the sole beneficiary. The kitchen equipment is leased under a second company that you also control. Vendor contracts are tied to Eris Holloway and Associates, where you're listed as the signing partner. Karis's eyes widened as she listened. Why such a complicated setup? Barclay offered a faint smile. Eris was not only a gifted restaurateur, she was a strategic business planner. Initially, this structure was created for tax efficiency, but it now provides an unexpected benefit. He paused. It shields the Crown's most valuable assets from anyone who might try to misuse them. My husband and mother-in-law? Kara said quietly. I don't comment on family matters, Barclay replied diplomatically, but Eris wanted to ensure your protection no matter what. He slid another paper toward her. It contained the list of the restaurant's key staff members and their contact details. Eris singled out Chef Bram Cassidy and manager Nita Price as individuals she trusted fully. Karis took the sheet, a knot forming in her throat. Eris had protected her right up until the end. What do I do now? She whispered. Legally, you can reclaim the restaurant at any moment. However, it might be wise to observe your husband and mother-in-law first. If they attempt to act in your name without authorization, that's fraud. Karis hesitated. Part of her wanted to march directly into the restaurant and assert her rights, but another, calmer part urged patience. I'll wait, she decided. But I want to meet Bram and Nita. I need to know what's going on inside. After the meeting, Karis returned to Sweet Dreams Bakery. She opened the shop, prepared orders, served customers, and quietly considered how to reach the Legacy Crown staff without attracting attention from Jarvis or Tamsin. The day unfolded in its familiar rhythm, surprisingly comforting. One of the regulars, Franklin, the elderly mail carrier with gentle eyes and a fondness for blueberry muffins, came in near dusk. Karis, dear, he greeted warmly, I'll take one of your special muffins. As he ate, Karis asked, casually, Franklin, do you still deliver mail downtown? The Legacy Crown is on your route, isn't it? Of course, he nodded. Beautiful place, and I'm sorry about Eris. She was a remarkable woman. Yes, Karis murmured. Franklin, could you deliver a message to Chef Bram Cassidy for me? He gave a small, knowing smile. For you? Anything, especially if I walk away with another muffin. An hour later, Franklin returned with a short message. Jackson Bridge, 7 o'clock sharp. Exactly at 7, Karis stood on the bridge, watching the Chattahoochee River drift beneath the fading light. The rain had stopped, but the air remained cool and damp. Monroe. The deep voice made her turn. Bram Cassidy, broad-shouldered, mid-40s, graying hair, eyes sharp and blue, stood before her. His hands, lined with years of burns and scars, spoke of a life spent in kitchens. Mr. Cassidy, Karis said, extending her hand. Thank you for meeting me. Call me Bram. His handshake was firm. Let's walk. I'd rather we aren't seen together. They strolled along the riverfront as Bram briefed her on the past 24 hours. Your mother-in-law showed up this morning with your husband. She introduced herself as the new owner and waved around some papers. I didn't look closely. I sighed. Eris warned me there might be a struggle after her passing. She told Anita and me to trust only you. How did the staff react? Cautiously, Bram replied. Most of us worked under Eris for years. None of us expected abrupt changes. But your mother-in-law didn't waste time. Her first move was firing Liam, the sous chef, said he cost too much. Liam's been with us a decade. He knows the menu as well as Eris did. She can't just fire someone like that, Karis protested. She technically offered severance, but her attitude left no room for negotiation. Then she announced cuts. She wants to shorten the wine list, remove certain signature dishes, eliminate anything she considers overpriced. Karis felt unease tighten in her chest. And reservations? She asked. That's when Nita stepped in. She tried to warn Ms. Niles that many guests book months in advance, and that consistency is part of our reputation. But your mother-in-law insisted that a new business mindset mattered more. They paused at the river railing. Bram turned to her. Eris trusted you, Miss Monroe. She said you had a way of understanding people, not just feeding them, but giving them something meaningful. That's rare. Karis's cheeks warmed. I don't know if I deserve that. Eris wasn't one for exaggeration, Bram said firmly. If Eris believed you were the right successor, then you are. What happens now? Karis asked softly. How long can the staff hold on? Hard to say. Some, like Liam, are already gone. Others are waiting. Nita is standing firm, though. She's under pressure. Me? I'm too old to start fresh. But the crown isn't just a job. It's family. Eris built it that way. None of us want to see it torn apart. They exchanged numbers and Bram promised updates. The next day, Karis met Nita Price, an elegant woman in her 50s who had managed the crown almost since its opening. They met in a small cafe away from downtown where Nita recounted the unfolding chaos. She fires anyone who challenges her, she said, nervously stirring her tea. She slashed the wine list, removed signature dishes, and replaced our seafood supplier with a questionable company owned by a friend. Karis's worry deepened. And the customers? The regulars are noticing. Some have canceled their reservations. Judge Fitzgerald, 15 years a weekly guest, left mid-meal last night, said the crown no longer felt like the crown. Karis exhaled slowly. The reputation Eris had had decades cultivating was unraveling. And the vendor contracts? The wine cellar? Nita allowed herself a faint smile. That's the amusing part. Ms. Niles ordered half the wine collection sold to raise funds, but when Edward, our sommelier, tried to access the cellar, he discovered only the registered owner could authorize entry. And that's me? Karis said, as well as the signatures on most vendor contracts. Eris planned everything.
4 more cooks walked out with him. With no head chef and half the kitchen team gone, combined with a damaged reputation and a wave of canceled bookings, the Legacy Crown hovered on the brink of shutting down. Tamsin, who had no background in running restaurants, had no idea how to manage the unfolding disaster. Only when the crisis deepened did Jarvis finally understand that his mother wasn't rescuing the business at all. She was tearing it apart with impulsive decisions and her need to control everything. The morning after Brahm's exit, the Legacy Crown opened later than it ever had. Tamsin moved restlessly through the dining room, trying to find anyone who could take over the kitchen. Her bright pink suit looked painfully out of place against the refined decor Aries had chosen. Subdued tones, polished wood, and quiet elegance. I don't see the issue, she declared, summoning the remaining employees to the dining room. If one cook leaves, we hire another. Atalanta is full of people who can make food. Nita Price, still clinging to her manager role, cleared her throat softly. Miss Miles, Brahm isn't just a cook. He's a Michelin-starred chef who has been here for 15 years. Many guests come specifically for his dishes. Tamsin brushed the concern away with a flick of her hand. Oh, please. People come to the Crown for the name and the ambiance. 1 star more or less, what difference does it make? As long as a dish looks good, that's what counts. No one dared to oppose her. Staff members exchanged uneasy looks, each realizing their worst fears. The new owner didn't understand fine dining at all. Tamsin continued, issuing orders as if she were reorganizing a closet. Robert will take over as acting chef for today. We'll keep the menu simple. Only the best-selling items, nothing with complicated French titles. People want clarity. Robert, a young cook with only 3 years of experience, went pale. Skilled as he wasn't ready to lead the kitchen of a renowned establishment. Miss Niles, I'm not sure I can handle being head chef. Maybe we should close briefly and look for someone qualified to take Brahm's place. Tamsin narrowed her eyes. Close? Absolutely not. The Crown will not shut down even for a day. You'll be fine. Cook the usual items, just make them simpler. She turned to Nita. What's our reservation list? Nita checked her tablet. 18 tables for dinner, 3 regulars, including Senator Harrison. Wonderful. We'll manage. But that night marked the downfall of the Legacy Crown. Robert tried his hardest, but without sous chef Liam and the seasoned team, Brahm's signature dishes were impossible to replicate. The kitchen moved sluggishly, disorganized, and overwhelmed. Plates came out late, and many weren't up to standard. Senator Harrison, a refined man with decades of loyalty to the restaurant, sent back his steak twice before motioning for Nita. My dear, what is happening? He asked quietly, though his disappointment was undeniable. I've eaten here every week for 20 years and never experienced anything like this. Nita cast a discreet look toward Tamsin, who was busy chatting with other diners. We're facing temporary difficulties, Senator. Brahm is no longer with us. What? The senator didn't bother hiding his shock. He's the heart of this place. Why would he leave? New management, new direction, Nita replied gently. Senator Harrison sighed, sympathetic yet firm. I heard Aries passed the restaurant to her goddaughter. Is that true? Yes, though it's complicated. I see. He stood. Please give the chef my regards and bring me my check. I'm afraid I can't finish dinner tonight. Once he departed, more dissatisfied guests followed. By closing time, half the reserved tables had emptied. Some diners left mid-meal, others canceled before arriving. Tamsin was livid. What is happening? She snapped as the last patrons walked out. Why so many cancellations? And what's this nonsense about the food? Nita pressed her fingers to her temples. Miss Niles, the Legacy Crown is a fine dining establishment. Our guests expect refined service and exceptional dishes. They notice the changes, especially the regulars. Then we need new patrons, Tamsin interrupted. More ordinary people, fewer snobs. People who just want decent food without all the drama. The reputation can be rebuilt. She raised her chin. Tomorrow, we cut prices by 20% and launch ads. I've already spoken to the local paper. Nita knew there was no point arguing. Tamsin listened only to herself. That same night, in the small apartment above Sweet Dreams Bakery, Karis opened the door to an unexpected visitor, Jarvis. He looked drained, his eyes rimmed with fatigue. I didn't know you lived here, he murmured, glancing around the humble space. It's temporary, Karis said, setting a cup of tea before him. What brings you this late? Jarvis wrapped both hands around the warm mug. The restaurant. Things aren't going well. There was no triumph in Karis's tone, only a faint, tired irony. Complicated? She asked. Very. When Brahm left, several cooks went with him. Customers are unhappy. Mom thinks it's a small setback, but I'm not sure. What did you expect, Jarvis? Karis asked softly. The Legacy Crown isn't just a building and a menu. It's the people behind it, the traditions, the years of earned respect. Jarvis dragged a hand through his hair, the gesture revealing his anxiety. I know, it's just Mom was so convinced. Owning a restaurant has always been her dream. A dream built on taking someone else's inheritance. Kara said quietly. Jarvis winced. I know, I shouldn't have handled the papers that way. It wasn't right. Kara studied his face, trying to see whether his regret was genuine or just panic over a failing business. So what do you want from me, Jarvis? She met her eyes desperately. Help us. Talk to Brahm. Convince him to come back or help us find another chef. You know people in the culinary world. Kara shook her head slowly. You don't get it. Brahm won't return while your mother is in charge. He respected Aris's vision, and Tamsin wants to reinvent everything. She's only trying to make it more affordable, more profitable, at the cost of quality and prestige. It won't succeed, Jarvis. The Legacy Crown was never meant for everyday dining. It's for celebrations, for food lovers, for people willing to pay for excellence. Jarvis exhaled. I've tried explaining that to Mom, but she won't hear it. She thinks she knows everything. And His voice trailed off. Karis didn't need him to finish. His whole life he had been shaped and restrained by an overbearing mother. Even at 36, he still couldn't stand up to her. I just want things to get better, he whispered. I want the restaurant to survive, and I want you to come home. I want everything to go back to the way it was. Karis looked at him carefully, measuring every word.
Nothing can return to the way it once was, Jarvis. Too much has already shifted. The following morning, Karis met Barclay Quinn in his office. The attorney welcomed her with a look of restrained satisfaction. I've heard the Legacy Crown isn't doing well, he remarked, motioning for her to take a seat. Yes, Karis replied. Brahm has left. Customers are unhappy. Jarvis came last night asking for help. And your response? I told him that things won't be as they were. A faint smile touched her lips. But that's not why I'm here. I need guidance. What steps I can take next? Barclay leaned back, studying her carefully. You want the restaurant back under your control? Yes, but more than that. I want to build something new, while still honoring Avris's traditions. Karis took a notebook from her bag. I've spoken with Brahm, Nita, and several key staff members. They're ready to join me. I'm considering opening a new restaurant in a different location. Barclay's interest sharpened. Go on. I found a spot near the old Fourth Ward alley. It's smaller than the Crown, but has real charm. An old structure with stone walls and arched windows. The owner is willing to rent it with an option to buy. She flipped the page. I want to call it Aris's Legacy. It would keep the spirit of the Crown, but add my own vision. Brahm would be head chef, Nita would manage, and funding is the part I need help with. Barclay opened a folder. As I've mentioned before, Avris set up a fairly intricate ownership structure. The wine cellar, worth over $200,000, is owned by a separate company in which you are the only shareholder. The professional kitchen equipment is also registered to you through a leasing arrangement, and there is an investment account Avris created for business development, about $300,000. Karis stared at him, surprised. She had never known about the investment fund. Avris was cautious. She wanted you to have room to grow. Whatever became of the main restaurant, these assets were meant for you to use for expansion. So I can use all of that to establish the new restaurant? Exactly. And you can legally remove the wine collection and equipment from the Legacy Crown at any time. They're yours, not the restaurant's. Karis paused to absorb the information. And the name, the Legacy Crown. What about that? The brand is registered under a company owned by Avris, which is now in your hands. The building itself is a separate property temporarily overseen by Miss Niles, without actual authority. But the brand, the recipes, the concept, those legally belong to you. A clear plan began forming in Karis's mind. She could relocate everything that made the Legacy Crown valuable, staff, equipment, wine, even the brand, and leave Tamsin with nothing but the empty building. Meanwhile, conditions at the Legacy Crown were deteriorating rapidly. Tamsin's advertisement campaign brought in new guests, but not the clientele the restaurant was designed for. People drawn in by lower prices were disappointed to discover the dishes were still costlier than typical eateries, and the quality no longer matched the fine dining reputation. Longtime patrons, hearing about Brahm's departure and the menu changes, canceled their reservations in large numbers. The once celebrated wine list was cut in half. Tamsin ordered the sale of the most expensive bottles to bring in quick cash, but when the sommelier went to retrieve them, they discovered only Karis had access. The keys and codes were hers alone. On the 7th day after Brahm's exit, reporters from a major food publication visited the Crown. They intended to write an article about how the Legacy Crown had changed since Averis Holloway's passing. Tamsin, oblivious to the danger, eagerly accepted the interview. "We're refreshing the Crown," she said, posing confidently in the dining room. "We're making the restaurant more modern, more accessible to everyday Atlantans. Averis built something great, but times are changing. We must evolve to stay relevant." The journalist, a quiet man with sharp eyes, nodded as he wrote. And Brahm Cassidy? His departure surprised many in the culinary world. Tamsin dismissed it with a shrug. "Brahm is talented, but his ideas didn't match ours. We're searching for a chef aligned with a more democratic cuisine." "Democratic?" the journalist echoed, one eyebrow raised. "Simpler, clearer dishes, less pretentious. Why use fancy foreign names and tiny portions that cost a fortune? People just want a good meal." After the interview, the journalist ordered dinner. He chose one of the few remaining signature dishes, lamb fillet with rosemary and truffle mash. Once a masterpiece under Brahm, it now appeared dull and ordinary. He took a few photos, barely touched the plate, thanked the staff, and left. 2 days later, the article was published, and it doomed the Legacy Crown. The headline read, "Crown in Freefall: How Atlanta's iconic restaurant is losing its greatness." The piece detailed everything that had crumbled since Averis's death: Brahm's departure, the loss of staff, declining food quality, and the weakened service. The journalist highlighted Tamsin's interview, contrasting her democratic cuisine with Averis's philosophy of excellence and respect for fine dining traditions. The article exploded online. Bloggers, critics, and former patrons shared their memories of the Crown during its golden years. Someone started the hashtag "Save the Crown, y'all." When Jarvis showed the article to his mother, Tamsin was livid. "Snobs, every one of them. Do they think they know how to run a restaurant?" "Mom, maybe we should rethink our plan," Jarvis said carefully. "Maybe return to the original concept. Look for a chef with fine dining experience." "You're against me too?" she snapped. "I thought you supported me." "I just want the restaurant to survive. And now we're losing customers, money, and our name. I don't need those pretentious diners. New people will come who appreciate my ideas." But no new guests arrived. After the harsh review, reservations dwindled further. On Friday nights, once the restaurant's busiest, only 3 couples were seated. On the 9th day after Brahm's departure, the final blow arrived. In the morning, several men in suits entered the building with documents. "We represent the owner of the wine collection and kitchen equipment," they informed a stunned Tamsin. "What owner? This is my restaurant." "The building may be yours, Miss Niles, but the equipment and wine collection are not. They belong to Miss Karis Monroe." That same day, the kitchen appliances, refrigerators, wine cellar contents, and even some pieces of furniture, registered separately, were removed from the Legacy Crown. By evening, Jarvis found his mother sitting alone in the empty dining room with a bottle of whiskey. It's over, she said dully. Without equipment, we can't operate. Without the wine, half our income is gone. The staff is leaving. Jarvis sat beside her, unsure how to comfort her. For the first time, he saw her strong-willed, stubborn mother defeated. We can buy new equipment, he muttered, though without confidence. Tamsin let out a bitter laugh. With what money? Do you have any idea what a professional kitchen costs? And that wine collection, Averis built over 30 years. We've been outplayed, Jarvis. Your wife was smarter than I thought. On the 10th day of Tamsin's ownership, a sign appeared on the door of the Legacy Crown. Closed for renovations. But those who understood the situation knew better. There would be no renovation. The Legacy Crown, Averis Holloway's life's work, had effectively ceased to exist as Atlanta had known it. Across the city, inside an old stone building with arched windows, preparations were underway for a new beginning. Averis's legacy was getting ready to open, bringing together the finest elements of what Averis had created, now combined with Karis's new vision.
That evening, as the Legacy Crown finally closed its doors, Karis's phone buzzed. Jarvis's name lit up the screen. She stared at it for a long moment, unsure whether to answer. Seeing his name stirred a mix of emotions. Part of her wanted to ignore him. Another part was curious why he was reaching out now that the restaurant was closed for good. After several rings, she finally picked up. "Hello," she said evenly, her voice detached. "Karis." Jarvis's tone was frantic, nearly panicked. "Thank goodness you answered. We need to talk. It's urgent." "About what?" She tried to sound composed, though a tiny flicker of satisfaction stirred at hearing his desperation. "The restaurant. The Crown. It's falling apart. Mom is hysterical. The lawyers are discussing bankruptcy because of rent and vendor contracts. You have to help." Karis stayed silent, letting him continue. She was seated in a small office at the back of the future restaurant, which was set to open in a week. On the table lay sample menus she and Bram had been perfecting for days. "Karis, can you hear me?" Jarvis's voice trembled. "This is a disaster. Mom invested in renovations, new furniture, even took out a loan against her home. If the restaurant doesn't reopen, she'll lose everything." "What can I do to help?" Karis asked, calm as ever. "Can you—" Jarvis hesitated, as though afraid to speak the next words. "Talk to Bram? Convince him to return? Or help us find another chef? Or get the equipment and wine collection back?" Karis finished him. "Yes." Relief laced his voice. "Can you do it? Mom's willing to do anything. She admits she was wrong, rushed the changes." Karis interrupted. "I can't return the equipment or wine. They've already been moved to the new facility." "What new facility?" Alarm edged his words. Karis drew a slow breath, bracing herself for the conversation she knew was inevitable. "I'm opening a new restaurant, Jarvis. Eris's legacy. Bram, Nadita, most of the Crown staff, they're with me." A stunned silence followed, broken by a strangled laugh, more a sob. "So all this time, while Mom and I were trying to save the Crown, you were planning your own restaurant, taking our staff and equipment?" "I haven't stolen anything," Karis said firmly, though her tone remained calm. "Legally, everything I took belongs to me. The staff left willingly. They didn't want to work with your mother." Jarvis's voice sharpened. "You knew what you were doing from the start." "No," Karis replied honestly. "At first, I was shocked by your actions, then angry. Then I realized, Eris's legacy isn't the walls of the Legacy Crown. It's the people, the traditions, the recipes, everything she spent 30 years building, and everything your mother nearly destroyed in 10 days. Silence hung on the line, and Karis imagined him pacing the empty restaurant, absorbing the scope of the disaster. "I need to see you," he finally said. "In person. Where are you now?" Karis hesitated. Should she reveal the new address? What if he shows up with Tamsin, causing a scene? "I'm at the old 4th Ward alley, number 19, she decided. "But Jarvis, if you come with your mother or lawyers, I won't speak to you." "I'll come alone,"
he promised. 20 minutes after the call ended, Karis placed her phone down and rose. She walked to the window, watching the Atlanta sunset bathe the cobblestone street outside, lit by old-fashioned lanterns, perfect for a restaurant that honored tradition yet embraced innovation. Exactly 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Jarvis stepped inside, looking exhausted. Rumpled shirt, dark under-eye circles, hair tousled, so unlike the meticulous man she knew. Karis stood at the threshold, surveying the room. The new restaurant wasn't fully operational yet, but the major work was done. Stone walls, wooden beams, and arched windows gave the space an almost sacred feeling. Wooden tables were dressed in pristine white cloths, the same ones from the Legacy Crown. Against the back wall, the glass door wine cellar sparkled with bottles from Eris's famed collection. "Come in." Karis gestured, cautious. "Watch your step. Some cables are still exposed near the entrance." Jarvis stepped inside slowly, eyes tracing the familiar furniture, the photos of Eris on the walls, and the kitchen glimpsed through the half-open door. "So, this is it," he murmured. "All this time, you were planning this?" "This?" she asked simply. "Yes," he said. "Would you like some coffee? The kitchen's already running." Jarvis nodded, still absorbing the sight. Karis led him to a small office where they could speak privately. Bram, busy in the kitchen, nodded but did not interrupt the sauce he was preparing. They sat at the table with coffee. "Why didn't you tell me you were opening your own restaurant?" Jarvis asked, finally. Karis raised her eyebrow. "Would you have listened after giving the documents to your mother?" "I did a terrible thing, I know. Mom was so persuasive, said you couldn't handle it, that the crown would fail under you. She claimed it was her chance to achieve her dream, and I believed her more than my own wife." Kara shook her head. "Jarvis, at first I felt betrayed. 6 years of marriage, and you so easily sided with your mother? It wasn't easy," he whispered. "I was torn, couldn't sleep, especially when you didn't come home, didn't answer my calls. But I didn't act to fix things. Even when it was clear your mother was destroying the restaurant, you did nothing." Karis finished. Jarvis rubbed his face defeated. "I tried to talk to her. You know how stubborn she is. She never admits mistakes, never listens. And I've obeyed her my whole life." Karis regarded him with regret, not anger. "This crisis only confirmed what I already knew about our marriage. You've never stood up to your mother, not even for me." "I love you, Karis. I've always loved you," he said. "I know," she replied softly, "but love alone isn't enough. You must have the courage to support the person you love, even when it's difficult." Silence fell, and Jarvis finally asked the question that had haunted him. "What about us, Karis? Is there a future for our marriage?" Karis took a moment before answering. "I don't know. Right now, my priority is opening the restaurant. Our relationship needs time, space, to reassess." "Do you want a divorce?" he asked, pained. "I want clarity. The past few weeks showed me how much your mother's influence controlled you and us. If we are to continue, it must be on a new foundation, equality and respect." Jarvis nodded. "And your mother?" Karis said firmly. "She made her choices. She could have been honest, recognized the restaurant was mine, and cooperated. Instead, she chose deception. Now she must face the consequences." "Not even a little compassion?" Karis paused, reluctant but practical. "I'll see what I can do. Maybe reach an agreement on the building. But I will not return nor let Eris's name or recipes be used. That's non-negotiable." Jarvis exhaled, relief clear. "Thank you, Karis. I know you don't have to, after everything, but I'm not doing this for you or my mother." Karis interrupted. "I'm doing it to protect Eris's legacy. She deserves better than scandal or litigation." Jarvis rose, seeing the discussion was over. "When is the opening?" he asked, now viewing the restaurant as a new beginning, not a lost property. "In a week," she replied. "A quiet opening for select guests, then the official launch." "You will invite me?" Karis studied him carefully, hope and fear in his eyes.
We'll see. Much depends on what you do in the coming days. When Jarvis left, Kara sat at her desk, reflecting. Until a month ago, life had felt predictable. A bakery, her marriage, occasional dinners with Eris. Now everything had changed. She was a restaurant owner, her marriage fragile, her relationship with Tamsin shifting into something more manageable. A knock interrupted. Bram entered, formal as ever despite weeks of working closely together. "Ms. Monroe, I finished the main menu. I'd like to review some details." Karis smiled. "Of course, Bram, and please call me Karis. We're partners now." Bram returned a slight smile. "How did the talk with your husband go?" he asked, placing the menus on the table. "Better than expected. He finally understands. And his mother, she's complicated. Invested in the crown, took out a loan. Now it might all be gone." Bram looked at her thoughtfully. "You remind me of Eris," he said. "She always sought solutions that didn't burn bridges, even with people who didn't deserve it." Those words touched Karis deeply. "Thank you, Bram," she said quietly. "That means a lot." They turned their attention to the menu, Karis absorbed in work, personal worries set aside. The grand opening demanded focus, and she was determined to create a restaurant Eris would be proud of. That night, as she was about to leave, her phone rang again. Barclay Quinn's name appeared. "Ms. Monroe, there's an offer on the Legacy Crown building from a New York restaurant group entering Atlanta. They're offering a strong price." Karis paused, considering the news.
Nothing will ever return to how it was, Jarvis. Too much has shifted. The following morning, Carice arrived at Barclay Quinn's office. The lawyer acknowledged her with a measured smile, one of restrained satisfaction. "I hear the Legacy Crown is running into trouble," he said, motioning for her to take a seat. "Yes," Carice replied, nodding. "Bram has left. Customers are dissatisfied. Jarvis came by yesterday asking for assistance." "And what did you tell him?" "That nothing would ever be the same." She offered a faint smile. "But that's not why I came. I need your guidance on what steps to take next." Barclay leaned back in his chair, studying her carefully. "Do you want to regain control of the restaurant?" "Yes, but not merely regain it. I want to create something new while preserving Eris's legacy." Carice opened her notebook, pulling it from her purse. "I've met with Bram, Nadita, and other essential staff. They're willing to join me. I have a plan to open a new restaurant elsewhere." Barclay leaned forward, intrigued. "Tell me more." "I discovered a site near the old Fourth Ward alley. It's smaller than the Crown, but it has character. An older building with stone walls and arched windows. The owner is open to renting with an option to buy." Carice flipped a page in her notebook. "I want to open a restaurant called Eris's Legacy, preserving the best traditions of the Crown, but with my own additions. Bram will be the chef, Nadita the manager, and funding is arranged." She smiled. "This is where I'll need your guidance. Eris mentioned certain assets were set aside separately from the restaurant, aside from the wine cellar." "Of course," Barclay replied, opening a file. "As I mentioned, Eris created a complicated ownership structure. The wine cellar, valued over $200,000, is under a separate company in which you are the sole shareholder. The professional kitchen equipment is also registered in your name via a leasing arrangement. There's also an investment account Eris set up with around $300,000. Carice's eyes widened. She had not known about the investment account. Eris had been prudent. Barclay continued. "She wanted to ensure you had the resources to grow. Regardless of what happens to the main restaurant, these funds can be used to open a new one. Additionally, you can remove the wine collection and kitchen equipment from the Legacy Crown anytime. They legally belong to you, not the restaurant." Carice considered this. "And the name? The Legacy Crown? It's a recognizable brand." "The Legacy Crown brand is registered under a company owned by Eris, which you now control. The building itself is an independent asset, temporarily managed by Miss Niles without legal authority. But the brand, the recipes, the concept, they're all yours." A strategy began to form in Carice's mind. She could move everything of value from the Legacy Crown: staff, equipment, wine, and brand to a new location, leaving Tamsin with nothing. Meanwhile, the Legacy Crown's condition deteriorated. Tamsin's advertising campaign attracted a crowd, but not the restaurant's usual clientele. People drawn by discounted rates were disappointed to find prices still higher than normal and food quality below previous standards. Longtime patrons canceled en masse upon hearing of Bram's exit and menu changes. The wine list, once the restaurant's pride, was halved. Tamsin ordered the most expensive bottles sold to boost cash flow, but when the sommelier attempted to access the cellar, only Carice had the keys and codes. 7 days after Bram's departure, journalists from a prominent food publication visited the restaurant, planning a report on the Legacy Crown's decline post-Heiress Holloway. Unaware of the potential fallout, Tamsin accepted the interview. "The Crown is being refreshed," she said, posing for photos in the dining room. "We're modernizing it for everyday Atlantans. Heiress built a great restaurant, but times change. We must evolve." The journalist, a young man with sharp eyes, nodded while taking notes. And Bram Cassidy? His departure had surprised many in the culinary world. Tamsin downplayed it. "Bram is skilled, but his vision differed from ours. We're seeking a chef aligned with our approach to more democratic cuisine." "Democratic?" The journalist raised an eyebrow. "Clearer, straightforward dishes. Less pretension. Why all that French terminology and tiny portions for massive prices? People just want quality food." After the interview, the journalist ordered dinner: lamb fillet with rosemary and truffle mash. Once a masterpiece under Bram, it now looked ordinary. He photographed it, thanked the staff politely, and left, barely touching the dish. 2 days later, the article was published, the final blow for the Legacy Crown. Headline: "Crown in Freefall. Atlanta's legendary restaurant loses its edge." It chronicled Heiress's death, Bram's departure, staff losses, and the decline in quality and service. Tamsin's statements about cost-cutting and democratic cuisine were contrasted with Heiress Holloway's standards of exceptional quality. The article went viral. Bloggers and critics shared memories of the Crown's golden days. A hashtag appeared: #SaveTheCrown Y'all. When Jarvis showed his mother the piece, Tamsin exploded. "Snobs! They're all snobs!" She paced the empty dining room. "Do they think they know what a restaurant should be? Mom, maybe we should reconsider our approach. Return to the original concept. Hire a fine dining chef." "Against me, too?" Tamsin snapped. "I just want the restaurant to succeed," Jarvis said wearily. "We're losing patrons, money, reputation. I don't need those snobby customers. Others will come who appreciate my vision." But the new patrons didn't appear. Reservations dwindled further. Friday nights, once packed, had only 3 couples. On the 9th day after Bram left, the decisive blow came. Men in suits arrived with documents. "We represent the owner of the wine collection and kitchen equipment," they told a stunned Tamsin. "What owner?" Tamsin bristled. "This restaurant is mine." "The premises belong to you, Miss Niles, not the equipment or wine. They belong to Miss Carice Monroe." That day, kitchen appliances, refrigerators, wine, and some furniture, all installed separately from the property, were removed from the Legacy Crown. That evening, Jarvis found his mother in the empty restaurant with a whiskey bottle. She said, "It's over," lifeless. "Without equipment, we can't operate. Without wine, half the profits vanish. Staff is leaving." Jarvis sat beside her, unsure what to say. For the first time, he saw his domineering mother broken. "We could buy new equipment," he offered hesitantly. Tamsin laughed bitterly. "With what money? Do you know how expensive a professional kitchen is? And the wine Heiress collected for 30 years? Gone. We've been outsmarted, Jarvis. Your wife is cunning." On Tamsin's 10th day of control, a notice appeared: Legacy Crown closed for renovations. Those in the know realized there would be no renovations. Heiress Holloway's life work had ceased to exist, at least as Atlanteans remembered it. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, in a stone building with arched windows, preparations were underway for a new restaurant. Heiress's legacy was almost ready, combining the finest of Heiress Holloway with Carice's innovations. That night, as the Legacy Crown closed, Carice's phone rang. Jarvis's name flashed. She stared at the screen, debating whether to answer. The call brought mixed emotions, part curiosity, part desire to ignore him. After 5 rings, she picked up. "Hello," she said, neutral, emotionless. "Carice," Jarvis's voice was frantic. "Thank God. We need to talk. It's urgent." "About what?" She tried to stay composed, secretly savoring his desperation. "The crown," he sighed convulsively. "It's collapsed. Mom's hysterical. Lawyers discuss bankruptcy over rent and vendor contracts. You have to help." Carice remained silent, letting him continue. She sat at a small office in the future restaurant, menus Bram and she had been working on in front of her. "Carice, can you hear me?" he pleaded. "This is a disaster. Mom spent on renovations, furniture, even a home loan. If the restaurant doesn't reopen, she loses everything." "What can I do to help?" she asked calmly. "Can you—" Jarvis hesitated, afraid to speak. "Talk to Bram? Convince him to return? Or help find a new chef? Or get back the equipment and wine?" Carice finished for him. "Yes." Hope tinged his voice. "Can you? Mom's willing to do anything. She admits she was hasty." Carice interrupted. "I can't return the equipment or wine. They're already at the new facility." "What facility?" Alarm entered his voice. Carice exhaled. She had preferred an in-person talk. "I'm opening a new restaurant, Jarvis. Aris's legacy. Bram, Nadita, most of the Crown staff, they're with me." Silence, then a choked laugh, almost a sob. "So all this time, while Mom and I tried to save the Crown, you were plotting your own restaurant? Taking staff and equipment?" "I haven't stolen anything, Jarvis," she said steadily.
Karis's voice remained calm, yet a subtle firmness threaded through it. "Everything I've taken is legally mine. The staff left on their own. They didn't want to work with your mother. You orchestrated all of this." Jarvis's tone carried accusation. "You knew what you were doing from the start." "No," Karis replied honestly. "At first, I was shocked by what you did. Then I felt anger. And eventually, I realized Eris's legacy wasn't confined to the walls of the legacy crown. It's in the people, the traditions, the recipes, the 3 decades of work your mother nearly destroyed in just 10 days. Jarvis stayed silent. Karis imagined him pacing the empty restaurant, trying to comprehend the scale of the disaster. "I need to see you. We need to talk in person. Where are you now?" Karis paused, considering whether to give him the new restaurant address. "What if you show up with Tamsin and make a scene?" "I'll come alone," he promised. "Number 19, Old 4th Ward Alley," she said. 20 minutes later, after ending the call, Karis set her phone down and moved to the window. The Atlanta sunset cast warm hues over the cobblestone street outside, illuminated by stylized lanterns, the perfect setting for a restaurant honoring tradition but embracing innovation. Exactly 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Jarvis entered, looking exhausted. Rumpled shirt, messy hair, dark circles under his eyes. Rarely had he looked so disheveled. Karis welcomed him at the threshold. The restaurant wasn't fully open, yet the major work was complete. Stone walls, wooden ceiling beams, elegant arched windows gave the space the air of an old sanctuary. Wooden tables with pristine white cloths, once at the Legacy Crown, stood neatly arranged. Behind a glass door, Eris's legendary wine collection glimmered. "Come in," Karis said, gesturing carefully. "Watch the cables. They're not fully concealed near the entrance." Jarvis stepped in slowly, his eyes tracing familiar furniture, photos of Eris on the walls, and the kitchen tools visible through the half-open door. "So this is it," he said softly. "All this time, you were planning this?" "This?" Karis replied simply. "Would you like coffee? The kitchen's already running." Jarvis nodded, still stunned. Karis led him to a small office for privacy.
Brahm, busy in the kitchen, nodded respectfully but didn't interrupt as they sat with their coffee. "Why didn't you tell me about opening your own restaurant?" he asked finally. Karis raised an eyebrow. "Would you have listened after handing the documents to your mother?" Jarvis looked down. "I did a terrible thing, I know. Mom was persuasive. She said you couldn't handle it, that the crown would fail under you. She convinced me it was her moment to fulfill her dream, and I believed her more than you." Karis shook her head. "Jarvis, at first, I was devastated. 6 years of marriage, and you sided with your mother so easily?" "It wasn't easy," he said softly. "I agonized. Sleepless nights when you didn't answer calls or come home." "But you did nothing to stop her?" Karis finished. "Even as she destroyed the restaurant, you remained passive." Jarvis rubbed his face. "I tried to reason with her, but she's stubborn, never admits mistakes, never listens, and I obeyed her my whole life." Karis regarded him without anger, only regret. "This crisis proved what I feared. You could never stand up to her, not even for me." Jarvis met her gaze, pain in his eyes. "I love you, Karis. Always have." "I know," she said softly, "but love alone isn't enough. Courage to support the one you love, even when it's hard, matters too." They were silent for a moment before he asked the question that haunted him. "What about us? Does our marriage have a future?" Karis answered honestly, "I don't know. Right now, my priority is the restaurant. Our relationship needs time and space." "Do you want a divorce?" he asked, pained. "I want clarity," she said firmly. "The last weeks revealed your mother's influence over our marriage. We cannot return to the past. If we continue, it must be anew, based on equality and respect." Jarvis nodded. "And Mom?" Karis said, "Desperate. She invested her savings, took a loan, but it was her choice. She could have acknowledged I owned the restaurant. Instead, she chose deception. Now she faces the consequences." "You won't help her, even out of compassion?" Karis hesitated. Though part of her felt satisfaction at Tamsin's predicament, she also felt responsibility. "I'll see what I can do. Perhaps we can negotiate the building, but I won't return. Eris's recipes and name remain off limits." Jarvis exhaled, relieved. "Thank you. I know you don't owe her anything, or me." "I'm doing it to protect Eris's legacy from scandal," Karis replied firmly. Jarvis rose. "When's the opening?" "In a week. Soft opening for select guests, then the official launch." "And I?" He hesitated. "We'll see," Karis said quietly. "Much depends on your actions in the coming days." When Jarvis left, Karis reflected. A month ago, her life was predictable. Bakery, marriage, dinners with Eris. Now she owned a restaurant, her marriage hung by a thread, and her relationship with Tamsin was shifting. A knock pulled her from her thought. It was Barkley. "Mrs. Monroe," his professional voice said, "news regarding the Legacy Crown building. A New York restaurant group wants to buy it, offering a strong price." Karis paused. Selling would solve many problems, yet she hesitated. "Can we wait until tomorrow? I have an idea to discuss." "Of course," Barkley agreed. "I'll be in the office from 9 a.m. Karis looked around the nearly finished restaurant. Sunset light cast dancing shadows across the stone walls. Arisa's legacy had its own soul, distinct from the crown, yet honoring its finest traditions. Her idea was risky, but potentially profitable. Instead of selling, lease the building to Tamsin for a new concept, preserving the old legacy, but for a broader audience. Humility would be required from Tamsin, a quality Karis doubted, but desperation could bring change. Smiling, Karis reflected on Eris's wisdom. In restaurants, as in life, solutions should leave a pleasant aftertaste for all involved. Perhaps she had found it. She left the restaurant finally feeling optimistic. Whatever Tamsin decided, whatever became of her marriage, Arise's legacy would be her triumph, a place to realize her vision while honoring her godmother. The morning of the grand opening was bright. Karis arrived before 7 a.m., desiring quiet before the day's bustle. The restaurant had been transformed, stone walls adorned with antique Atlanta photos and portraits of Eris, a central arrangement of fresh flowers and herbs, pristine tables, polished cutlery, and crystal glasses, all reflecting refined elegance. She walked the hall, checking tables and chairs, then peeked into the kitchen. Brahm and his team were quietly preparing. "Everything's on track," Nadita said, appearing with a clipboard. 24 reservations confirmed. Wine ready, menus printed, staff ready by 5. Karis nodded gratefully. Brahm and Nadita's support had been invaluable. She couldn't have opened without them. "How do you feel?" Nadita asked. "Ready for the big day?" "Yes and no," Karis replied honestly. "I've waited for this moment, but I'm nervous. Eris built her reputation over 30 years. I'm just her goddaughter from a small bakery." Nadita placed a hand on her shoulder. "Eris saw what you don't yet. She trusted you to continue her work." Karis inhaled deeply, smiling. "Thank you, Nadita. Time to stop doubting and do what needs to be done."
The day passed swiftly as final preparations consumed Karis. She meticulously checked every detail, from the color arrangements to the lighting, from the wine temperature to the flawless uniforms of the staff. She wanted the first night of Eris's legacy to be perfect. At 4 p.m., with just an hour to go before the opening, a knock sounded at the door. Karis, inspecting table settings, flinched in surprise. Behind a glass door stood Jarvis, holding a bouquet of white roses, her favorite. He looked informal without his usual suit, wearing jeans and a blue shirt, a light stubble forming on his face. Karis hesitated, then opened the door. "Hello," Jarvis said softly. "I know you're busy, but I wanted to see you before the opening. I wish you luck." He offered the bouquet, and Karis accepted it, emotions mixed. She still resented his betrayal, yet appreciated his gesture. "Thank you," she said. "I didn't expect to see you today." "I'm not staying for the opening," he added quickly. "I know my presence might be awkward, especially for the staff. I just wanted to tell you I'm proud of you. What you have accomplished in so little time is remarkable." Karis studied him silently, trying to gauge his sincerity. Was it genuine admiration or an attempt to regain favor? "How is your mother?" she asked, changing the subject. Jarvis's expression darkened. "Not well. She's still in shock over the outcome. She invested everything in renovating the crown and is left with empty premises and debts. I've been consulting Barclay about potential solutions." Karis said, "There's a buyer interested, a restaurant group from New York, but I've considered another option." Jarvis raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "Tamsin can rent the building at a fair price. Not to continue the legacy crown, that name stays with me, but to create a new restaurant. Her concept, more democratic as she wanted, yet without harming the legacy." Jarvis looked astonished. "After everything she did, you'd do that?" Karis shrugged. "Not for her, for Eris. She always sought solutions benefiting everyone." Jarvis shook his head in disbelief. "You are incredible, Karis. Only now do I truly understand." He added quietly, "I had a serious talk with Mom, the first in years. I told her her control and manipulation ruined our marriage and nearly ruined my life. I won't let her influence me anymore." "And how did she respond?" Karis asked, curious. "At first, furious," Jarvis smiled weakly. "Blamed you for everything, called me ungrateful. But later she seemed to grasp it. She admitted acting impulsively with the restaurant, that she should have learned more before changing everything." "That's progress," Karis said. "Yes," Jarvis reflected. "By the way, I got an apartment. We both need space to think.
I need to live independently, free from Mom's shadow. Karis was surprised. It was a bold step for someone long entwined with his mother. I'm happy for you, she said sincerely. A big step. They stood in comfortable silence, understanding more in these moments than in many prior conversations. I have to go, Jarvis said finally. Big night ahead. I wanted you to know I'm working on myself and hope someday you will trust me again. As he turned, Karis called, Jarvis, tell your mother my rental offer still stands. She can contact Barkley if interested. Jarvis nodded and left, leaving Karis with the bouquet and swirling emotions. Exactly at 5 p.m., Eris's legacy opened to the first guests, longtime friends of Eris, loyal legacy crown patrons, renowned food critics, and members of the press. Karis greeted each personally, feeling both excitement and calm, as if Eris's presence lingered. The dinner honored Eris Holloway. The menu combined her classic dishes with new creations by Bram and Karis. Each plate included a card with its story or an anecdote from Eris's life. Once seated, Karis addressed the room. Good evening, she began. Silence fell. Thank you for joining this special moment. Eris's legacy exists not only as a restaurant, but as an extension of my godmother Eris Holloway's philosophy. Food nourishes both body and soul. She paused, reflecting. 30 years ago, Eris opened a small cafe that became the legendary Legacy Crown. Today, we start a new chapter. We maintain the traditions and quality that made the Crown famous while adding our own touch. Eris always said, honor the past, but look to the future. That is our principle. Guests nodded, many raising glasses in agreement. Karis continued, Chef Bram Tassity and his team will present dishes embodying Southern American cuisine with a modern twist. Each dish has a story, a character. We hope they resonate with you as they have with us. She raised her champagne glass. To Eris Holloway, whose love of cooking and people inspires us all, and to new beginnings that preserve the best of the past. Applause filled the room and dinner commenced. Each dish was a masterpiece: lamb fillet with rosemary and truffle mash, fish from an old Georgia recipe reimagined, desserts like Karis's lavender and honey cake. Critics noted meticulously, photographers captured every plate, and guests exchanged praise. Karis moved from table to table, gathering feedback, recounting stories of Eris, and discussing the restaurant's future. By night's end, it was clear. Eris's legacy had opened to overwhelming success. Journalists promised glowing reviews.
Critics predicted Michelin stars in the near future. Loyal Legacy Crown patrons expressed joy that the spirit of their beloved restaurant still thrived. When the final diner departed, it was past midnight. The staff, exhausted, were elated. Bram allowed himself a broad smile for the first time in years, accepting congratulations from his team. We did it, Nadita told Karis when they were alone in the quiet hall. Eris would have been proud. This is just the beginning, Karis replied, her voice full of confidence and anticipation rather than worry. The next day, news of Eris's legacy's opening appeared in every local newspaper and food blog. The reviews were glowing, reservations poured in, and the restaurant phone rang nonstop. A week later, Karis received an unexpected visitor, Tamsin Niles, dressed in a modest gray suit rather than her usual bright attire, arrived between lunch and dinner when the hall was nearly empty. May I speak with the owner? She asked Nadita, who, surprised, led her to Karis's office. Karis greeted her mother-in-law politely, with measured restraint. Tamsin gestured to the chair opposite her desk. To what do I owe this visit? She looked uncharacteristically uncertain, almost fragile. Sitting down, smoothing her skirt carefully, she remained silent for a moment, as if gathering her thoughts. I came to discuss your offer, she finally said. The lease of the Crown building. Karis nodded, waiting. At first, I wanted to refuse, Tamsin admitted. Pride wouldn't allow me to accept help from someone I've treated poorly. I understand, Karis replied calmly. But then I looked at the empty building, counted the debts, and realized I had no choice.
Tamsin gave a faint smile. Besides, Jarvis made me see things differently. He reminded me that I've always dreamed of owning my own restaurant, but I was trying to steal someone else's dream instead of creating my own. Karis was struck by the honesty and self-reflection in Tamsin's words. It seemed the recent events had truly shifted something in this powerful woman. "What have you decided?" Karis asked. "I would like to accept your offer to open a new restaurant in the Crown Building with a different name and concept, something more accessible, a bistro with home-style cooking at fair prices." "That's a great idea," Karis replied sincerely. "That neighborhood needs exactly that kind of restaurant." Tamsin nodded, then added with effort, "I also want to apologize for how I treated you over the years, for what I did with Eris's inheritance. I acted out of jealousy and ambition without considering the consequences." Karis was stunned. She had never heard her mother-in-law apologize. "I appreciate your words, Tamsin," she said after a pause. "I am ready to move forward without holding a grudge." Tamsin appeared genuinely relieved. "One more thing. Jarvis is really concerned about your marriage. He's changing. For the first time in years, I see real determination and independence in him." Karis remained silent, unwilling to discuss her marriage, even with this humbler version of Tamsin. "I'm not interfering," Tamsin quickly added. "I just wanted you to know he's sincerely trying to be a better person." After Tamsin left, Karis sat in her office reflecting on life's twists. A month ago, her life seemed predictable. A small bakery, a marriage with Jarvis, occasional dinners with Eris. Now, everything had changed. She owned a successful restaurant. Her marriage was fragile, yet her relationship with Tamsin appeared to be evolving into a healthier dynamic. That evening, as the restaurant buzzed with diners, Karis stood at the bar observing her team. Bram led the kitchen with his usual rigor and precision. Nadita moved gracefully among tables, supervising the service. Waiters, sommeliers, and assistants worked harmoniously as one unit. "This is your legacy, Eris," Karis thought silently. "Not just the recipes, not just the restaurant, but the people you brought together. I will preserve and enhance all you created." At that moment, Edward, the sommelier, approached with a bottle of wine. "Miss Monroe," he said respectfully, "a guest at table 5 asked me to give you this. He said it's Eris's favorite wine, always opened on special occasions." Karis took the bottle, reading the label, a rare vintage Eris had treasured. She looked toward table 5 and saw Jarvis seated quietly in a corner. Their eyes met across the crowded room. Jarvis smiled slightly, respecting her space. Karis hesitated, then nodded to Edward. "Open the bottle and pour 2 glasses. I'll join my guest shortly." She wasn't certain of her marriage's future, or if she could fully forgive his betrayal. Yet, standing in her thriving restaurant, surrounded by people who trusted her, Karis felt an unexpected certainty. She could handle whatever came next. Eris's legacy lived within her, not only in culinary skill, but in confidence, determination, forgiveness, and the ability to balance tradition with innovation. Karis walked toward Jarvis's table, each step strengthening a power she had never fully known, but which had always been there, waiting to awaken. "I'm really glad you're here and that I can share this story with you. If you enjoyed it, show support by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Comment with your city and current time. I'm curious to see where you're watching from. If you want to support me further, small donations are welcome. I share new life stories every day. 2 of my most popular stories will appear on screen now, so you can choose what to watch next.